The greatest leaders in business look for the emerging stories in their organization and use the data to choose their preferred outcome. What outcome do you want in your business? Listen to the stories of industry veterans, coaches, and consultants so you can choose your preferred business outcome. Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. And that's really long, so I just call it the BBSC. But let me tell you why this started. For those who are joining us for the first time, for me, for the longest time, I used to think my effectiveness as a leader and my efficiency as a leader had everything to do with how much was up here, how many books I read, and how smart I was. And then I started to get a little bit wiser. And I realized, look, I can't keep up with 50 people. So it was then about how many people did I know that knew things that I didn't. And the size of my Rolodex, if you can still use that term, the size of the contacts from my Rolodex was how powerful and effective I became as a leader. Can I call someone up who's been doing it for 25 years? And they can tell me in 10 minutes how to think better. This podcast is centered on finding those blind spots, the things that you don't know, the things that I don't know. And today I've got Deborah Peters on. Hey, Deborah, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. I know we're going to share some good morsels for your listeners.
Yeah, I'm really excited about kind of what you've done. And I want to get to Deborah and her background in a little bit. I want to do a little bit of housekeeping and encourage anybody who's listening into this podcast, whether it's today or in the future, feel free to type in comments, agree, disagree, ask questions. This is not about being right. It's about being more effective. So feel free to chime in and ask us. And if it's a question for Deborah, I'll make sure I get you in touch with her so that you can ask her or put you all directly in touch. In the next couple of weeks, I've got a couple more conversations happening. I've got on January 13th, I've got Mike Liana. The topic is employee buy-in equals process certainty equals higher business valuation. Building process in your company is what increases the valuation of your company, and how you get those employees to buy into that process has everything to do with how successful you are. That's what Mike's going to be talking about. On January 18th, I've got Jeff Nishwitz, Snow Globe Leadership, shaking up your influence and your impact. I love the way he talks. Just how do you shift your perspectives is what he's going to talk about. But that brings us to today. And Deborah Peters, business growth is not a struggle. It's a mindset expansion of the leaders. It's about shifting your perspective. It's kind of what I'm hearing. Deborah, did I say that the right way? Is that kind of the way you're thinking about it as well?
You nailed it. It is. And, it's what we don't know that we don't know, getting out into that field of possibility and shifting the thinking. And you have to ask different questions in order to shift the thinking. Well, you have to ask questions, period. It's like if you're just making these statements of this isn't working or that isn't working or we're not able to XYZ, then that's exactly it. It's a block. It's an energy block. It's a mindset block, and it will throttle back the growth of the company. So indeed, we got to shift the mindset of the leadership team in order for the organization to become its potential.
So let me give you a couple of bullet points on Deborah and kind of her background. I'm reading a little bit from her bio, just so you know a little bit about why I invited her to the podcast. Every roadblock under the sun, you name it, Deborah has crossed it. You've been there and done that. You're a single mother at 15, turning an abusive childhood into inspiration for helping clients. So you've come from a place of deep pain, deep challenge, to this place where the sun is shining brightly. And I love that part of the story. You now travel the world as a keynote speaker and business coach. So you're taking and sharing some of those little boxes of light and giving them to others, which I think is the noblest purpose that is possible, right? Lifting others. You launched your business accelerator system in 17 countries over the last 20 years. You've coached heads of state, developed mindset training for the FBI, negotiated trade agreements between two countries, and you're currently publishing your first book. And you still have many, many years to go. You've done all that.
It's just getting going.
I know. I love this, and there's always already so much energy just sort of in the chemistry here. Your special and unique tool set is this neuroscience tools, bringing high-level approach to accelerate business growth, shifting mindset on receiving fulfillment, alleviating poverty, and guiding communities into thriving. I don't know that I did the greatest job in the world of summarizing everything that you've done, but did I give them a little bit of a snapshot into who?
I think you did. I think you did great. Absolutely.
So a friend of mine a couple of months ago talked to me about this idea of mindset is where you are, but kind of shifting this idea to a heart set. How does that resonate with you? Shifting mindset, shifting perspective from maybe mindset to heart set. How does that sit with you?
It's not an either or, it's an and. There is an intelligence in our heart. Our heart thinks, and so does our mind. This has been an interesting journey for me because I started with owning a gym in my 20s and training athletes and professional athletes and bodybuilders and power lifters. And the common theme always was the relationship they had between their head and their heart, and that determined the performance of their body. So fast forward it to now, and I just did this training between the holidays for a construction company. It was a communication skills training, and I was showing them how, through an exercise, how easy it is just to shift your perception of things, how to identify and get past limiting beliefs that stand in the way of getting on as a team, of having higher level conversations, moving the needle in the growth of the firm. And at the end of the exercise, it was a closed eye exercise. And at the end of the exercise, I said, so where did you feel that? And they all stuck up their hand and said, in my heart. I felt it in my heart. And there's the key. We can get a lot done with our minds, but when we bring the heart into it, it's like the C parts, it just changes everything.
So I've got some young kids and I want to, 12, 11 and 8. So they're still on the younger side. And my poor kids have to listen to my management insights and principles all the time. Hopefully it's for the best. I talk to them about there's 3 minds in the body. There's sort of the gut, there's the mind, and there's the heart. And I talk to them about this idea that the mind only talks about things or has learned things from the past. Somebody else has experienced that at some point in time. Isaac Newton learned about physics and he wrote it in a book, and you get to learn that. The heart doesn't think in terms of the past. It only thinks about where we're going in the future. I want to become this type of athlete. I want to become this type of performer. And the connection, I think what I'm hearing from you is, how do I, based on what I've learned in the past, become that athlete or performer? How does that resonate with you? Am I getting that right?
You are. And so the how is simply on where you put your focus. One of the things you can do is like literally put your hand over your heart, put your hand on your chest and close your eyes. And in less than 30 seconds, 15 seconds, you're going to go internal, because wherever we have that touch, that tactile, is where our focus goes. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a really simple, I like to teach tools that you can have in your hip pocket, wherever you're at and whatever you're doing. It's not something you have to okay, I need to stop and do this thing, because you won't do it. But if it's something that you can just in a conversation, you can just simply put your hand on your heart and make your next statement, and it'll bring you into a different space of intelligence. Not better, not worse. Let's get out of the wrongness of things. It's not an either or. We're not going to
it's an and.
Right. Yeah, it's an and. It's okay, milk is good today, but it's not tomorrow. We're not doing that. That's the polarity of thinking that's got us into so much struggle and strife and hardship. So it is just really so simple about going internal. You can feel it. It's undeniable. And expressing from there, they can feel it.
Yeah.
whomever you're speaking with.
So I always like to give, I love my analogies. I think you'll probably find out through the course of this. I talk to my kids sometimes about this idea so that they can enjoy the analogy. I say, how do you teach someone to ride a bike without ever letting them ride a bike? And they say, well, I mean, you just pedal and you hold the handlebars. So I was like, is that all? Well, then you have to balance and you got to build some of this confidence. And I said, how do you teach all that stuff? You can't really teach it. You kind of almost need to experience it. And the point that I get to with them is you, if you think always with your mind, how to use if the mind is a tool and the heart is a tool, how do you use the heart as a tool? Well, you can't talk to someone who's only used their mind how to use the heart, right? You've got to experience it. You've got to give it a shot before you really do that. How does that sit with you in terms of the people that you've talked with? Do they get that shift that's got to occur?
Well, they feel it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the feeling is everything. And this is the piece that's missing, is it's not what you visualize as much as the feeling. We come out of a period of time in history where you weren't supposed to feel. You were put the game face on and go to the office. And that paradigm in and of itself created massive separation within how people functioned and showed up at work. And just think of how much easier growth could have been, or communication could have been, or teamwork could have been if that hadn't been the paradigm of the time. But we've evolved, we've grown, we're more spiritually mature as a humanity, and we bring that now as a natural course of being. Look, I've been teaching this stuff for 20 plus years, and the stuff I'm talking about today, although it's maybe a little more detailed and
Top of
perhaps
mind,
a little
right?
more, sophisticated in how it's rolled out, the concepts, the big brush strokes are the same as they were 20 years ago. And the receivership, though, is a completely different experience, where before I was like talking this foreign tongue, they'd be looking at me going like, what is she talking about? This Pollyanna stuff. And now it's the norm. So it has to be the feeling. To answer your question specifically, it's about getting into the feeling. It's about desiring. First of all, it starts with a desire to be more effective as a leader. And again, asking that question instead of making a statement. So the question might be, what else could I do? Or how else could I view things? Or what other perspective could I bring to the table here that would make me a more effective communicator, leader, whatever, ... right?
So this is really something interesting that I feel like I personally I struggle with for a long time, having come from a background around data and analytics and numbers. I used to think, hey, the numbers are the answer. And I started to realize that was a very junior way of looking at things. A more effective way of looking at things is when I looked at data and numbers, it's actually about asking more questions. And that's where leadership really leads to, right? It's not about having answers as the leader, it's asking better questions. And I think that's a little bit of what I'm hearing from you, right? Once you start to feel that person on the other side of the table, the person who's working with you or alongside of you, whatever the case may be, instead of saying, hey, here's where I want you to go, say, so here's what we had determined is the place we need to go. How do you think we get there? And getting their buy-in, as opposed to just simply, which is more of a feeling-based thing than it is about giving them directive. Does that resonate with you as well?
One of the things I do is I suggest they don't use the word how.
Okay.
Because if we knew how to get somewhere, we'd already be there. How is always a question that brings up a answer that revolves around motivation. Like if you say let's say one of your children does something naughty, and you say to them like, how did this happen? And it's like, well, I don't know. It just happened, Dad, because if they knew how, they probably wouldn't have done that. So the question might be, what else is possible? What haven't we thought of yet? Um, what are we doing that we could be doing differently? Are we doing what we is best for this? Is there another better way? So it's, so the cursed hows are really what keep people stuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you can choose a new question, what if, what would happen if, or what haven't we thought of yet? That's my favorite. What haven't we thought of yet? And then calibrating off of the results, because results, success leaves clues. The results will always tell you if you're on it. And, so there's, then this brings up another topic. There's a fine line between, how far do we go till we get an evidence procedure before we realize that we need to be asking a different question. And nobody can give you that answer. In the calibration process, sometimes you just got to hang in there 5 minutes longer because you haven't asked the question long enough to get the answer that moves the needle. Other times you need to, this is where your gut comes in, to your point, right? The mind of the gut saying, wait a minute.
So there's something here.
Yeah. Hello. So it's, look, at the end of the day, it's not that complicated. I know we're making it sound complicated perhaps, but if you just, here's my magic pill. If everybody just meditated once a day for 15 minutes, you would start to cultivate this arsenal of power that enables you to have the clarity. Yes, I'll leave it there.
So there's a lot of stuff that's kind of people consider we have been taught.
I know
that the stuff is woo-woo stuff. It's out there for people who are gonna have incense burning in the background, whatever, right? I used to be one of those people. I think I have made a transition to where I do spend my time doing it to hear the voice that's inside.
Sure.
Is that why people should do that? So they can start to hear themselves speak?
Because it's all there. The power that you wish you had, it already exists within you. I'm calling it meditating, where you sit quiet with your eyes closed and just listen to the sound of a fan and quiet your mind for 15 minutes. But, if you look back in history, anyone that's done what we would consider to be massive success in the world had some form of meditation. Some of them, it was golfing. Some of them was if you look at our captains of industry, our founders of our great nation, Rockefeller, Chase, Carnegie, they took walks. They had, these long walks in nature each day as a part of their mastermind with their creator, with that spark within their heart that was giving them life and guiding them forward. It's always been there. We just have a tendency to try to sexy it up all the time so that it's trendy and it's cool. But, at the end of the day, it's just simplicity. I don't want to make it any more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I love to get up early, and at 4:45 I go for a walk, and I call it my self-grounding time.
Yeah.
Where there's nothing else. Dogs aren't even barking because they're inside the house at that point, right? It's just quiet for 45 minutes.
Amazing.
Where I just let the thoughts roll through my head. And I think that's what you're saying, right? The answers are there already. You just got to give them, and you got to give credence to the fact that they're there.
Yes. It's interesting because we have a narrative that's been handed down generation to generation that, business is hard. Most businesses fail. It's a struggle. You have to expect to grind it out. And I think it's all, I just think that's a propaganda piece. I don't think any of that's true. I think that it's about going into alignment with what it is you're creating, and viewing your business as, a creation tool that you get to bring your ideas to, you get to bring your talent, your gifts, you get to bring a space and an opportunity for others to join you with their gifts and their talents and their creativity. And when you start to shift the perspective from it's hard, it's a struggle, I can't find any good people, to the latter, that, hey, this is my inspiration, this is an idea, this I'm co-creating, it's coming through me, and it's a gift and it's an opportunity for others to join me. And when you start to think and talk like that, you're tapping into an energy vein that is really the truth of what business is all about. We have a tendency to think that creativity is in the arts, it's in entertainment, it's in visual art or sound art or whatever. Business is probably one of the most creative things you can do with your life.
Yeah, someone told me, they said if I want to go compete in the Olympics in a sport, I have to listen to the rules that somebody else has set. But in business, it is the ultimate frontier because I set the rules and I compete, right?
Yeah, you can make it as big or as expansive. Like, one of the things I suggest is business owners, you're gonna have to go through a little bit of a learning curve if you're not someone that is in the habit of stepping back a little bit, by, like, to your point, walking in the morning. I recommend you have some sort of meditative process before you start your day. Don't turn on your phone, don't turn on anything or talk to anyone until you've had a few minutes with yourself to get into that alignment, because you're going to align somewhere, whether you're going to align to your higher self that guides you and feeds you information, or whether you're going to align with the rest of the world that is full of struggle and craziness, especially now, everything that we're experiencing. So what are you going to align with? You're going to align with that part of you that is tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and is energy? Or are you going to align with a world of chaos that is talking about something is going to go wrong? What are you going to worry about next? Because that will be the results that you get, whatever you're aligned with.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a business owner or as a business leader, someone in a company who wants to, I'll say, was pushing up against a ceiling of some sort of barrier. They keep banging up against it. I know, I've been here. And you keep asking this. What I found is I started asking the same questions over and over again, right? So I all I can see is triangles. So guess what? I just keep seeing triangles. I don't see the squares and the circles that exist. And going through this meditative process, going to this place of self-grounding again every day, does that allow me to start to be more expansive in my thinking? Is that the goal here?
That's the objective. And so when you're out there, for you, it's walking. When you're out there, then that's when you start asking different kinds of questions. So it might be worth your time to say, take 20 minutes out of a day this week and to sit down with a notepad and practice writing out some open-ended questions that are different from what you currently ask yourself. And even if you just took one of those open-ended questions, like, what else is possible beyond what I've already thought about? What's next? And just those two questions, and just play with them for a week or two and just see what presents itself, because it opens up the portals of your mind to tap into higher levels of thought that are waiting for you. Now, what's interesting about this from, like, a neuroscience perspective is when you start asking these higher level questions, at the end of our let's say neural pathways, there's these little fingers called dendrites. And when we ask a different question, the dendrites reach out just kind of like a plant with roots in the ground reaching for water. And as the roots of the plant start finding the water in the soil, then they grow more into the source of water. It's the same with the dendrites in our brain, in our mind. It's like they start to seek each other out. And eventually, as that inspires ideas that you hadn't thought of yet, because the question's new, then the ideas start to connect to the higher level questions. And pretty soon a whole new thought form takes place. And with that happening, now you're tapping into more possibilities than what you've allowed yourself to consider before. And through the repetition, somewhere between 3, 7, and 21 repetitions, these new answers start flooding in that then you can apply in practical ways to the growth of your company. Now, how many repetitions? We don't know, because it really depends on how invested you are emotionally in your old patterns. So it might take up to 21 repetitions. That's where that old saying comes in. It takes 21 days to change a habit. Well, that's actually erroneous. It takes somewhere between 3, 7, and 21 repetitions. So it just depends on, how inspired and enthusiastic you are about creating new results. That's really it.
So let me play this back to you, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of what
I know that was a lot.
No. And that's why I'd like to distill kind of for the smaller mind that I have. And that is just this idea that, look, once you give yourself the opportunity to shift your perspective by having this self-grounding, this meditative process, right? You start to just, the way I think of it is, look, I can be looking at you, but if I just shift slightly to the right a little bit, my view of the world changes. So let me shift slightly to the right. And that actually physically makes a change. These axons and dendrites realign in my head. And the more times I do that, I start to build this cluster of new physical formations in my head that give me access to a whole nother way of thinking that I didn't have before. I form a new habit.
Form a new habit.
And what the real unlock or the takeaway message from all that, it's what I'm hearing from you, is this idea that, gosh, if you, and I call them the revelations, right? The new perspective, right? If I keep seeing these perspectives, these revelations faster and faster, what happens is my ability to start creating more revelatory process just gets faster. Problems start becoming elegant. Solutions to problems become elegant, potentially even faster as you get more adept at doing that. It's kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy at some point in time. Is that true?
Yeah. And then you actually realize that the problem was never a problem. The problem was an invitation to a blessing. The problem was an invitation to allow yourself, and I really mean this, like to allow yourself to be more. So it's never a problem. It's always a gift.
When Thomas Edison was asked about how did he come up with the light bulb, he said, actually, I figured out 1,000 ways not to create the light bulb first. Right?
Yeah.
It goes back to that gut feeling. He's like, but I knew there was something there.
Always something more.
Once he did that, boom, all kinds of companies started to spin out an idea, started to spin out of it because that pathway had been formed.
Well, and isn't that always the way? You think about Roger Bannister being the first person to break the 4-minute mile, and the exercise physiologist told him he would like literally self-destruct if he pushed his body that hard. And then within just a few weeks, there was like a dozen or something more people that did it, because there's different kinds of thinking. There's the people that need social proof, like I need to see this in order for me to think that I too can go there. And then there's the people that they bring it out from the inside. And this is what I'm talking about, is bring it out from inside you. You're on this journey. You have this business for a reason. And it's not just about the money that will buy the houses and the college educations for your kids. It's so much more. You are so much more. Be willing to explore that. And listen, I get it. We've got a society that is pretty ingrained in don't push the envelope too far, risk adverse, like be afraid. I get it. And so you get to decide who you are going to be and where you're going to allow yourself to grow within this body, within this lifetime, and how much you're going to get after it. You get to decide every day.
So I'm going to play this back to you, kind of using a couple of quotes here, right? It's not possible until it is, right?
Right.
And I mean, if you want to think about Martin Luther King, what he tried to accomplish just as one potential icon, right? What he had a dream that could be achieved was not possible until it was.
Right.
And by the same token, you're saying, hey, look, if you have, I mean, kind of tying all this stuff together, right? These meditative practices, being able to create these new synaptic responses in your head, right? The physical structures in your head allow you to start to shift your perspective and how you do it, because it is possible. You just have to give it a shot long enough. That's the hard part, right? Is the long enough part, right?
Just go for it. You have nothing to lose. You have everything to gain from it, because it's just all energy.
Yeah.
And we have, in our business, we basically need to have three energies in order for things to click. We need to have a creator. Without a creator, a business doesn't really create. It doesn't get off the ground.
Not
right?
manifested in any way, right?
Yeah. And we have to have a connector energy. Now, these aren't necessarily people.
Yep.
They're energies. We have to have a connector energy. So there's got to be somebody that's people energy that are making connections. Without connections, you could have the greatest idea and it's not going to really go anywhere. And we need mover energy, because things have to keep moving. If they don't keep moving, they stagnate. And what what happens to stagnant water? It just becomes a cesspool. So these energies are really key. Everything is energy. If I think if you're a small business owner, if you're running a team, or if you're part of a mid-sized company and you're in charge of people, it's really important you understand that everything you're doing is energy. And so nothing is static. Everything is always moving. And the question is, are you tapping into higher levels of thought to keep that energy high, so the movement is toward what you want instead of what you don't want to be happening?
Or just movement, right?
Or just movement, right? Back and forth. Yeah.
Movement toward what you want.
All the time.
Let me ask you this question. So you have this system that you take a lot of companies through. What are the questions that are floating around in their head? What are the challenges? What are the glass ceilings that they're seeing that says, I got to pick up the phone and call Deborah? Why do they call? What's the first purpose?
Sometimes they're, which has been the case this last while, is things are really cooking for them, and it's beyond their systems. It's beyond their business model structure. Because that's really where it all has to start, is with the business model structure. And one of the things that I make the top priority in a business model structure is mindset, because without that,
got nothing.
You got nothing.
Yeah.
And then other times it's, when you use the word glass ceiling, it's like they've hit this wall on either productivity or on profitability. They know they're capable of more. But it's the thinking, like the Einstein quote, right? You can't, tomorrow's problems won't be solved with the same thinking that created them.
That's right.
I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah. That's right.
But yes, it could be, again, it's like, it's not an either or, it's an and. It's like, there's different problems or shall we say choke points at different inflection stages. And usually that's it.
So I used to play a lot of athletics when I was a kid, various activities. And, just as a simple example, hopefully people can relate to this. When I played soccer growing up, what I was learning as skills as a 12-year-old That's what I needed to learn as a 12-year-old. What I needed to learn as a 15-year-old was different than what I learned. As a matter of fact, I need to clean out all that I was learning from being a 12-year-old so I could make space for becoming a 15-year-old, right? And then ultimately, so I heard Barry Diller, the guy who initially found a whole channel, right, a TV channel. He said, learning is really not the key. He said, that's kind of table stakes. Unlearning is actually the key. So you can free up the space. You've got that mail counter that keeps collecting junk on it or the garage that you got to clean out every 6 months. You got to clean it out, make space for new stuff to come in. I think that's what I'm hearing from you, right? It's time to say, right, what is no longer effective for me anymore? So I can just throw that stuff in the trash because I'm ready to go to the next level. And that's why people come to you. Is that right?
Exactly. And we can always build off of what they already know. And essentially what happens is, as we build up new patterns of thought, then we develop new patterns of acting. And it's cumulative. Everything you've been through has brought you to this point. So I would never discard any of that. The question is, what else haven't we thought of yet? Mm-hmm. And really getting to that next level of reaching higher into more awareness. I know these are big terms, right? These are like meta terms, and yet there's an energy to them that when I say them, I know people can feel it. Can we write down the details of what more awareness is? No, not necessarily, because when we do that, then we have to look at where they're stuck. And I really put my emphasis on turning them away from where they're stuck and having them look at and focus on and give their attention to where they want to go. Because that will always unwind this choke point, always, every single time.
And I think what I'm hearing here is this idea that Simon Sinek talks about the whole purpose of the why, right? It's this enduring purpose that persists beyond your job, persists beyond the day, beyond the week, beyond the month, maybe over many, many years, right? And it's this idea that if you focus on kind of where that higher purpose is and where you're really going, all these little issues become kind of elegant. It's like when you sit in that airplane at 25,000 feet, you see the same town or city that you're in. It looks completely different, even though it's exactly the same thing, but you just see it from a completely different perspective. It's this idea of kind of stepping up a level. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, if I use that analogy, let's say you're sitting in the jet and you're flying, 30,000 feet above the ground. At that point, the airport you took off from and the landing strip you're headed to are irrelevant. You're in the now, like you're in the jet and you're hurtling through, the sky, and you're in the now. Honestly, that's why I love long haul flights, is because it's the one time where I'm just like, okay, I'm shutting it all down. I'm going to OD on some movies and I'm just going to like chill.
Yeah.
And that's when some great ideas come through. But the point is that even though you're in the sky and you're hurtling through the sky, and the airport you took off from, and the landing strip you're headed toward don't matter, they do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they don't matter in the moment, but they still have value. And this is my point. It's like, I'm not looking to have the company leadership team forget about everything they've already learned or know. It's about, where are we headed to next?
Is being able to step outside of yourself long enough to just kind of see where objectively how things
are. And that's the point of the 15 minutes of meditation. It's just a pause. It's like, okay, I'm suspended in this loving space of non-judgment, non-action. There's no right or wrong here. I'm just going to suspend thought. And, I think you said then that the term you used was then, okay, then that's setting aside what you already know. So this would be an example of that. You're suspending thought for just a few minutes and not pounding your nervous system with emails and texts and phone calls and thought and struggle. You're just suspending thought. And in that space, it's like the gap between the thoughts. That's where the newness and can come in and guide you toward the ease of things. And this is the magic. This is the secret sauce I instill in them. It's like, yeah, okay, we're going to build your systems. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to have more money. Great. But it's the ease of things. And there is an ease to everything.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the world has been, at least in recent history, has always talked about this idea of efficiency, efficiency, efficiency. What about becoming more effective, right?
Less more easy.
Yeah, right.
More easy about it. Because in the ease, everything clicks.
That's right. Then you start to lean into your own zone of brilliance, right?
You do. Oh my God, that's well said. Yes.
Because, you know, that's really what we, I mean, at least that's the way I think, is the stuff that what takes someone else an hour to do and I can do in 3 months. Man, that's what I should be doing a lot of, not a little of, right?
Yes.
The stuff that
all
takes
the time.
Stuff that takes me 4 hours to do, that takes someone else an hour, I need to hand that to them.
Absolutely. Don't be doing $20 an hour work if you're $1,000 an hour CEO.
So people come in, they come to you, you help them make this mindset shift that kind of sets the foundation for them to start. I mean, the word I used was revelation. So they can kind of start seeing more of an introspective and revelatory process in terms of how to approach problems, just how to kind of just step a little bit to the right and see it from a completely different set of lenses to say, oh, it's not that it was a problem. It's just that I wasn't looking at the problem the right way. Yeah. Right. And that paves the way for them to start. I mean, they start to internalize it and they start to do that, and it allows them to continue to start shifting and moving slightly differently in the future, which is what allows the unlock of lots of hidden potential. Did I get that right?
Well, it's not that they, and I don't want this to be semantics, but for clarification, it's not that they should look at the problem in a different way. Okay. It's that they should look at the possibility.
Okay. Gotcha.
Don't even look at the problem.
Yeah.
Set it aside, because the more you beat the drum of the problem, you can never look at a problem in a different way. Yeah. When you think about energy, so when people do problem solving, they're going to run into roadblocks because it's an oxymoron. It's like diabolically opposed practically. The problem and the solution aren't even on the same planet. They have completely different vibrations. They're different energy. So just set the problem aside and let's focus on the solution. And the solution is always in, what is it that we want to create here? You want to create more sales? Let's focus on creating more sales. Let's not focus on why we don't have the sales we want. If we want to create a better team environment where people are aligning and functioning together in a peak performance kind of way, then let's design that.
Interesting. A lot of people are focused on outcomes, right? I mean, I know a lot of business leaders, when I go to them, the first thing they're thinking is they want to think very logically, and they say, what is my return on investment? This is not a return on investment. I mean, the way I tell people is, look, if profit is your prime directive, then it's very short-sighted. But if empathy is your prime directive, profit comes along for the ride, right? It's not about ROI. ROI is part of the bigger picture. Is that the way you see it as well?
Yeah, so ROI is a symptom.
Yeah.
My question is, well, who are you being? Your ROI will be your willingness to grow yourself and to step into more of your potential. Then the ROI will show up.
Yeah.
Because there's always been a directive toward ROIs. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be measuring stuff and having metrics. Absolutely, we should. But we want to look at the core of who this company is being and who this leadership team is really being, because it's all going to start there and it all rolls downhill. I've done some projects where we had to circumvent the leadership team and work with middle management and, sort of take over the thinking from the middle up. But those are tough.
Yeah.
Those are tough.
Yeah.
And it takes some real committed people with tremendous belief in what they are investing in to make that work. It does. That's a workout.
Yeah. I mean, look, an example, going back to athletics again, right? When I was a little kid, I used to collect baseball cards. They have all the stats on the back, but even though you have all the stats on the back, it still doesn't define the player, right?
Right.
You need to know the story as much as you know the stats, right? Where they came from, what they did, the ranks that they rose through to get to where they are, is almost as important as understanding the batting average, right? The batting average doesn't tell you enough.
Yeah, it's just another symptom, isn't it? Because tomorrow that batting average could be greater.
That's right.
And that's the key. It's like there's a tendency to get caught up in benchmarks as being, well, this is who we are. And it's like, no, that's who you were. It's like if you go look at your bank account, that's not who you are. That's who you were. Because who you were being is what put that money in that bank account or lack thereof. Yeah. And when I say being, it's like thinking, feeling, and then doing, obviously, doing last. So then if you look at the bank account and it's a snapshot of where you were, not of who you are. Because who you are today, in your focus, in your intentions, in your enthusiasm and desire for growth, that's going to reflect in next week's bank balance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I often like to ask this just kind of to get a better understanding and also kind of give people a feeling of how they fit into it. What are the kind of questions that you wish people would ask when they first talk to you?
What's going to change? I'd love to be asked what's going to change.
And how would you answer that?
What do you want? Like, tell me what you want, and I'll tell you what's going to change.
That's right. I mean,
the bigger the ask.
That's right. If you want to achieve 100, well, then that's the ceiling of what you're going to achieve, right? If you're going to ask for 10 million, well, now you've got a new ceiling.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, change for a lot of people is like this terror thing, right? So if somebody said to me, hey, what's going to change? I'd be like, this is a person that gets it.
Yeah,
right. They know they're going to be giving up some habits.
Yeah, you're going to be looking at things from a new perspective. Mm-hmm. And when people come to you and they start working with you, I've always disliked that saying. It says it's not business. It's not personal. It's business. I don't even know what it's saying. Right.
Right.
I hear that in the movies, and I kind of scratched my. Ever since I was a little kid, I kind of scratched my head. I was like, wait, isn't it a person in the company? How does
I know, right?
And it's always bothered me. But it's everything about the person that makes the business. And I mean, I think that's the core of the whole conversation here, is that if you can shift yourself, then all of a sudden the company that you created shifts along with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a size company that this applies to?
No, I mean, small to mid-size has really been what our focus has been for the last 20 years. Okay. Definitely have worked with some high-performing entrepreneurs that have interests in a lot of different companies and various luxury markets abroad as well. But I think it's fun for me when it's that range, because then we can really create change without a lot of bureaucracy. Um, if I do something for like a Fortune 500 or something, it'll be a custom program for a leadership team pocket rather than trying to tackle, an entire behemoth that I just don't. I just think it's a lot more fun when people can make a decision and then we can get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me about you. So why do you do this? What keeps you on this path?
It's just so much fun. It's always evolving. When I think back of when I first launched this company, I was a speaker and I was traveling around speaking at conferences, and I felt like there was something missing. At the end of the speech, it'd be like, okay, well, now what? I want to be able to know these people more. I love knowing people's stories. I just love it. I'm a road tripper, I like to get on the road and drive from state to state and work from my laptop. And I always do the back roads of America. And I will, go into these little towns and meet the locals. And I just love hearing people's stories about how they've grown their lives or, overcome adversity and created these cool experiences in their lives. I just love that. And it's the same in a company, watching them grow. I have this one client that I've worked with off and on for the last 20 years. And every time he launches he's in mortgage banking. And every time he launches his next company, I get a text and he's like, okay, here we go. Let's build the next rock star team. And it's just so much fun to see these people shine. It's like, what a blessing. It's not work.
I heard a grandmother speak at a marriage or a wedding once, and when she got up there to speak, she was 95, which is funny because she said, "Look, 95% of the world is something you cannot control. There's the 5% you can, but and what I got out of that is if you can control 100% of that 5%, gosh, that's a glorious living."
Wow. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm hearing from you is seeing those people actualize and intentionalize how to live into 100% of that 5% that they can actually control over the world. Wow, what a beautiful place to be.
It's awesome. And then it impacts everybody. They take it home to their husbands or wives and their children, and that filters out into their communities. And it's just, I guess, my little way of sharing my talents to make the world a better place and just enjoy the process because I love what I do. I couldn't imagine doing something you don't love. Like, who would do that?
And many people go through their whole lives doing that, right?
I know.
And what I love about that, what you just said there about those people is it's spreading. Instead of the energy dividing, it actually just multiplies, it amplifies, and it just goes by leaps and bounds. You take it home, your kids, your neighbors, your next door neighbor thinks for the first time, maybe I should hang out a single of my own. That's beautiful, right?
Right? Yeah,
When
that's
that stuff
good.
happens.
That's good stuff.
Well, we've an hour went by rather quickly.
Like, boom.
It's funny how that happens. And anybody who's been listening, and I didn't even stop once to ask you all to chime in and put comments in. And I hope you got something out of this. I feel like I was engrossed in the conversation the whole time, asking questions of you and trying to summarize that.
Oh, this was so good. It's just, I feel like there was some magic here today. Thank you.
Well, no, I appreciate you spending some time with me and kind of sharing your perspective on the world. I think there's a lot of take-home nuggets. I always love jotting down notes, and I probably got about 25 different lines of take-home nuggets for myself that hopefully others got some component of or will see as well. So thank you for spending some time with me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. God bless.
Yeah, you as well.